Today on Pots and Trowels I'm going to be sowing some early seeds and chitting potatoes, which is brought to you with the support of Mr Fothergill's Cobra Garden and Darlac. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. I'm in the greenhouse today. The original plan was to be outside in the veg plot starting to do a little bit of preparation work, but earlier this week we had heavy rain, we've had snow, and it's just a quagmire out there. So I've come into the greenhouse where I'm going to do a little bit of pottering around and some seed sowing, but more of that in a minute because I just wanted to start by having a quick chat about potatoes. Seed potatoes, they're not going to be planted out into the garden until at least the end of March or even early April where we are in North Yorkshire. But seed potatoes are now available. So if you've got some being delivered or you're buying them from a garden centre, as soon as you get them home, it's a good idea to start chitting them. And that's the process where we put them somewhere cool and light, and it helps the little buds at the tips there, the eyes of the potatoes, develop into short shoots. So when we plant them out into the garden, they've got a bit of a head start. So I'm just putting mine in this tray like this. You could use an old egg box. They've already started to sprout where they've been in the packaging. That's fine, and these little shoots will turn over the next 6 or 7 weeks into strong shoots that we can go into the garden with. So just a little job to do, and they're going to sit on there. The other exciting thing that's happened, yesterday I had a parcel. I don't get many parcels, and look what I've got. I've got my seeds. All the seeds have arrived that we're going to be growing this year. So there's a lovely mixture in there of vegetables and flowers, and we'll be sowing those all the way through the season. A lovely tomato there. I'm going to leave that one out. So what I'm going to do with these is to keep them somewhere dry and cool. That's important to keep them good. And I've struggled with Jill over the last week or two to eat a whole tin of chocolates just so I can have this empty container. These seeds are going to live in there. It's airtight. We keep the damp out, and that will keep them nice and fresh. So I'll do that later. But what I'm going to do is just a little bit of early seed sowing. Now, it's far too early to be sowing most things. It's still very cold. We're only in the first week of February. This greenhouse I keep just frost free so I can overwinter tender plants, but I have got a small propagator here, so I can start some seedlings off a little bit earlier, and things like peppers, the sweet peppers and the chili peppers and some tomatoes we can start from seed now so that we've got good strong plants ready for early April to put into a greenhouse or a conservatory where we can keep them frost free. So only sow seeds now if you've got conditions warm enough to germinate them. You can give them frost-free conditions to grow them on until you need to plant them into their permanent position. So I can do that, and if you've got a windowsill you can do it as well, because you don't need a fancy propagator. Something like this little propagator is ideal. They're not expensive. It's just got a perspex lid on there with a little vent on it so it doesn't get too much condensation. Built into the base is a heating element, and this just plugs into a 13 amp socket, so a good bright windowsill is ideal, and it's nice and warm in there. It's just toasty warm, and it's only 8 watts, so it's really very, very cheap. So you can start some early seeds off there on a bright windowsill. But if in doubt, I always say to people, wait a few weeks, because you know it's not going to harm if you wait until the beginning of March to sow your tomatoes. They'll catch up eventually. They'll just be a week or two later. So sowing them, I'm going to do them in little pots. I only want half a dozen of each type, and I've got some multi-purpose compost there. So it's very simple, but it's worth just taking a little bit of time when sowing seeds, just to make sure you get it right. We want to give them all a good start. So I've filled the pot over full with compost, and then I'm just leveling it off with my hand, so I've got a nice level surface to sow on, and give it a tap. And then you could use the base of a plant pot. I've got some little pressers here, but anything really, just a glass or something. I'm just going to very lightly firm that down. I don't want to compact it, but I want it to be firmish. So I've just got this little sort of springy feel to the surface there. That's given me a lovely level surface to sow on, which makes it easier to space the seeds. And I've got a couple of varieties here of a hot chili pepper, a sweet pepper, and one of my favourite tomatoes, which is Tigerella. So we'll sow a few of these. This is a sweet pepper called California Wonder, which is a really good, reliable one. and this will then grow on in the greenhouse or the polytunnel right the way through. So I'm just going to pop a few of those on there, and I'm probably only going to put in this pot maybe 10 seeds, that's all. There's more than enough here, and if I keep the spares cool, they'll be fine for next year. If I get too many seedlings, I'll grow them on, and then I can give them to friends or neighbours if they want to have a go at growing a few peppers. And the idea is to sow them evenly across the surface. We want to give them all the same start in life, the same amount of growing area and the same amount of light, and I think that that is plenty there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's about 10 or a dozen seeds on there, evenly spaced out. They can go back in there, as I say, and we can store those for another time. And then it's just a case of covering them over. Now you could use a little sieve if you wanted to, but I just want to put a small amount of compost. So I'm just going to get a little bit of this compost here, put it on my hand just to break up any lumps, and then I'm just going to sort of sieve it over with my fingers just to get the fine bits there. Any lumps we can get rid of, and just literally do it until the seedlings disappear from sight. So that's giving them a light covering of compost, just lightly firm it down, little tap. I've already done a label because that's important, so we remember what those seedlings are, and then a drink. So this is just some tepid water, and I'm just going to give them a little drink just to moisten that compost like that. It will soak down very quickly, and then once that's put in the propagator, either in the greenhouse or in my little windowsill propagator here, which will go back into the house, they will germinate in about 10 to 14 days. Peppers take. They're not the fastest to germinate. They probably won't need any more water, and I can keep this base just moist. If the top does look like it's drying out, I'll probably just mist it over, and then we'll see, hopefully, those little seedlings appear, and when they're big enough and at the 2-leaf stage, I'll show you how you prick them out and move them on to grow them on. So even though the weather's horrible and wet outside, there are still bits and bobs you can be doing inside. So I'm going to sow some tomatoes now. Well, thank you for watching, and as always, please do tell all your friends about us. We're going to be with you all the way through the season doing lots of growing, so let's get as many people gardening as we can. Next week, hopefully it'll be a little bit better, so I'm going to go in the veg garden and we're going to start to warm the soil up. So we'll see you then. Bye.